What's up guys, it's Kamer. I wanted to give you a video with some tips in how you should be preparing for Set 2 Ranked. This won't necessarily be tips as far as classes, best compositions, and things like that. Just more about how you can prepare for Set 2 and patches in the future. Without further ado, let's get started. So I wanted to start off by talking about economy management. I feel like we got a pretty hard lesson in this in patch 9.21, and I wanted to talk a little bit about player damage, HP value, gold value, and how that all intertwines into economy management in an auto battler. So I made this quick little graph to show you the relationship between player damage and the value of your HP. It is directly related to one another, meaning as damage from players goes up, then the value of HP also goes up. And that can be reversed, as in when the damage goes down, the value of your HP also goes down. And this is because HP value is also related to gold value, but it's actually inversed. So in this one, I'm showing you the relationship between HP value and gold value. As the value of HP goes up, the value of gold goes down. This is because you want to spend more of your gold rather than holding on to it to maintain more of a health value throughout the game. I said that we got a pretty hard lesson in this in 9.21 because the player damage was drastically changed, which led to kind of a chain of events where gold value diminished, people were rolling very aggressively in the beginning, and the game felt like kind of a crapshoot, honestly, because whether you would hit your units or not kind of determined the end state of the game. And even if you could get to a top 4 spot, it ended up being who got the best items for their composition, not necessarily who had the best composition versus the other one. This is because you couldn't hit the exact units that you wanted to as frequently, and so because your composition may have been a little bit off, then you needed the correct items to get to that top 1 spot. I think realistically this is why patch 9.21 felt so bad, but moving forward we can at least use this as a lesson into how to adapt to these kinds of changes. So moving from set 1 to set 2, they did reduce the player damage in the beginning, which increases the value of gold and the amount of gold that you want to hold on to. They actually did increase the damage a little bit in stage, I believe, 3 and 7, it looks like. So I think economy management is something that needs to be looked at on a stage by stage basis, not necessarily as a full meta basis. Rolling more aggressive versus economy, those kinds of things. This is where that all comes into play, and it's based on player damage. I think that Riot has hit a good spot with player damage as it is right now, but I have seen some talks on Twitter that lead me to think that some additional changes to player damage will happen in the future. And if that's the case, just try to remember these relationships. And even within a certain game, you can use this as well. The less amount of health you have in general, the more valuable it is to you. Realistically, this, like, regardless of the player damage stats, this comes into effect where you look at how strong other people's boards are against you, right? Because whether player damage is increased or decreased, you're going to take either more damage if the board is a lot stronger than you, or you're going to take less damage if the board is a little bit stronger than you. You want to find that balance of being as close to optimal as possible. You want to either take very little damage or you want to do very little damage. This is because you don't want to overspend and completely crush the competition unless you're running like an early game composition. You feel for some reason that your items versus the other person's items aren't going to stack up well in a late game situation. Realistically, it's just an inverse relationship between HP value and gold value and how those things are going to stack up in the future. And based on that is how you should roll and or econ. While we're on the note of economy management, I did want to point out there's a couple things here that have changed. Gold value reduced very slightly in uncommon orbs as well as gold orbs. However, there are additional common orbs and uncommon orbs that drop in the later game. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of players push to level 9. So just make sure that you're not rolling endlessly at level 8 when possibly the best thing for you could be to save some money up, and push to 9, especially as you go into these PvE rounds where you're going to get an increase in gold. As we continue to work through some of the compositions that are possible in set 2, I did want to just make a point to say don't blindly follow these tier lists that are coming out. One tool that a lot of players are using is TFTatics. It's an overlay that you can put on your screen that will show you the item combinations, which is really good right now since they just changed a bunch. It's just a nice reminder to have if you forget what item switched to what. You can also open up the database within the game, which gives you access to these champion tier list, team compositions. I know I just said don't blindly follow tier list compositions, but as you first get started, these are kind of a good base to move forward. Maybe you see something in here that could use a little bit of tweaking, and you think you have something better to add on to it. Maybe you see a reason why, you know, one of these B tier compositions should realistically be S tier, and you can abuse that because everyone is working towards these S tier compositions. It's just a good resource to have, and if you're maybe getting items or champions that you're not so familiar with and you need some kind of information in a pinch, it's a really good tool to have at your disposal very accessibly on top of your game. You can download this overlay for use at TFTTactics.gg, but I'll put the link in the description as well. Once you find a composition you enjoy, make sure you run it plenty of times so you can fine-tune the decision making that you're going to have to make in a ranked situation. For instance, with Berserkers, I'm not really sure yet if a damage build with Deathblade and or Infinity Edge is better, or if something more like Hush and Disarm is better to completely wipe out the utility of their team. Another new aspect of set 2 that we need to keep in mind is the elemental hexes. Let's say you try a composition for the first time and you're on a cloud hex. Maybe that composition just wasn't the right team for that type of elemental hex. For instance, assassins might fare better on an Inferno board versus a cloud board because they can get their damage out more consistently. Make sure you're writing your results down somewhere. Open up a Google document and create a spreadsheet where you can keep track of your win-loss and to whom for certain compositions. It's human nature to have a confirmation bias one way or another. For example, if you like a composition, you're more likely to remember that composition doing well versus it doing poorly. With set 2 comes the addition of the first 7 cost, and that's Lux. Lux is a very interesting unit. She is an avatar and has a variable element. Avatar allows her to be counted as 2 towards the elements, and her variable element allows her to be any one of the 10 elements. Once you buy her as 1 element, that's the only element of Lux that you will see in the shop moving forward. Lux is very important because of this, because you can use her very easily as a late game transition. For instance, if you're running the Poison Glacial comp and you find that you're just not doing enough damage, maybe you should sub out 2 of your Glacial units, put in Lux, and then you can maybe find another 2 desert units. And this happens maybe from level 8 to level 9, since you'd be finding more Lux at that particular point anyways. But this could definitely be accomplished as a one-off as well. Let's say you think that if you had just a little bit more dodge, you could beat that assassin comp, put her out as a cloud avatar. Or maybe if you had just one more ultimate go off, then you want to use Ocean. You could use her as a desert, which would be a really strong splash. I think because of this, she should primarily be used as a transition tool rather than a win more type of situation. Last but not least, keep an eye on the PvE. This means anyone who has created an account just to play TFT has access to the PvE server now. So everyone can play. At the very least, make sure you're watching streams who are playing the PvE, or look out for blog posts from some of the creators around here. You want to make sure that you're not solely set on one composition, and you want to be able to play multiple compositions so that there's not as much downtime when a new patch is released. Well, those are my tips for getting prepared for Set 2 Ranked. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions about Set 2 or you want to see any particular content, leave a comment below and I'll definitely get started on that for you. Moving forward, I definitely want to just do some guides to work on specific compositions. I'm really liking Poison Glacials right now. I would love to hear your favorite composition. I have yet to dip into Shadow. I know that one's really great. Electric's really fun. I've done that one. Rangers is something I haven't really experimented yet, so there's just so many possibilities, and I think that honestly we've probably just scratched the surface as far as usable composition. So anyways, appreciate you guys watching as always, and I'll see you next time.